So we're to ensure consistency in the application of waste legislation across that region. I'll take the opportunity today to talk to you about your obligations for C&D waste, construction demolition waste, and indeed your obligations for waste in general. So just to look, the first part of the presentation is going to be a bit legal, we're talking about the Waste Management Act. So the general duty of the holder of waste, any waste, is you must not cause or facilitate the abandonment, dumping, or unauthorised management or treatment of waste, and you must not cause environmental pollution. That applies to any waste. So once you start a construction project, we just do construction at this stage here, you have material you want to get rid of, it automatically becomes a waste because you're disposing of it, you no longer want it, and you have a lot of obligations at that stage. So environmental pollution, and the reason it's referred to originally there, you must not cause environmental pollution, is the holding, transport or recovery of waste in a way that creates a risk to waters, the atmosphere, land, soil, plants or animals, creates a nuisance through noise, odour or litters, and adversely affects the countryside or place of special interest. Place of special interest, special areas, conservation, national heritage areas, all those other issues. That's what got us into trouble in Europe in the first place. We filled in our bogs and our estuaries and our inlets with this. It's very important to realise that definition of environmental pollution. Once an authorised officer under the Waste Management Act forms the opinion that there's a risk of environmental pollution, they can enter any site they want at any time. They can bring anybody they want onto that site and they can do anything they want when they're in there. That's a summation of what the powers of an authorised officer are. All we have to do is form that opinion. We can climb over the gate into your site and do anything we want. So the general duty of the holder of the waste, an extension of the first part, is you cannot give your waste to someone who is not authorised to take it. So a person who's authorised to take it is the person who has a waste collection permit, which is issued by the National Waste Collection Permitting Office. And that waste collection permit, we have an example of what the front page of it is. This is the permit number on the side of it, and this is a checkpoint there. So a waste collection permit will tell you who the person is, what type of waste they can carry, and that will be all listed out in European Waste Catalogue codes. They're now called List of Waste, but it used to be the European Waste Catalogue. Tell you where they can bring it to and what truck they can carry it on. So it's all laid out in that. So you hire someone to come into your site, so you've done the first part of it, you've decided you have a waste, you decided I'm going to give it to someone, they must have this waste collection permit. It's on the National Waste Collection Permitting Office website, and there are 400 collectors authorised by the National Waste Collection Permitting Office to carry soil and stone, which is the most common type of construction demolition waste. There's also, there's other, 170504 is the European Waste Catalogue code. We do checkpoints around the place, and we're looking for numbers on those vehicles, we're looking for the collection permit, we're looking for the type of waste. So just because they have a collection permit, you should look at the annex to ensure that they're allowed to carry the waste that they're taking from your site. So when they bring that waste, it's listed on their permit, they must bring it to an authorised site. So an authorised site is authorised either by the EPA or by the local authority, depending on the scale. An authorised site can take in, that site will have a facility permit, and that facility permit that's an example of a front page. It tells you, it does the same thing essentially. What type of waste they can accept, what time they can accept it. So if you have a site that's only open between 8 and 5 every day, it's not open on Saturday and Sundays, and you're giving your waste to a person who has a collection permit who says he's going there on a Saturday, he's not going there. So you have an obligation then, you're giving your waste to someone who's not authorised to collect it. I'm going to talk about the legal consequences of not complying with the Waste Management Act later on. Generally, every soil and stone site or C&D site will have a permit number on the gate. You'll see it's there. They generally have a wheel wash, because if we go back to the definition of environmental pollution, you must not cause a nuisance. So you put mud or other deleterious material on the public road, it's the offence under the Road Traffic Act, and it's under the Waste Management Act. So well-run sites will always have wheel washes on the way out. So if you comply with all these regulations, if you give your waste, if you decide on what you're going to do with your waste, you give it to someone who has a waste collection permit that allows him to carry it, he brings it to an authorised facility, it'll help us deal with the issue of the spreading of invasive species like Japanese knotweed. Certainly in Cork and throughout the southern region, we can see the dumping of C&D waste by the spread of Japanese knotweed on the side of roads. Every little lay-by that has C&D waste in it, you can see Japanese knotweed growing there. It'll also help you to deal with your obligations. You have asbestos removed from sites, and there are severe consequences for the person of the holder of the waste in not complying with these regulations. So you want how you're dealing with your asbestos on your site. If someone on your site takes away material which does not have, and they're not allowed to take away the asbestos, you have an obligation not to give it to them. So, but that's the things we've been talking about there about waste not going to sites. They're all failures. And before we always were concentrating on failures. We were chasing after people. Waste enforcement is changing, and the way we approach waste enforcement is changing. We're now focusing on the outcome, which the outcome we want to have is a clean environment. That's our outcome, and how we get there and how we prevent it from happening or prevent damage to our environment is what we're doing at the moment. So we're looking at the patterns of non-compliance, identifying the best time for intervention. That is actually on the sites of origin themselves. And you'll see the next slide how we're going to get those sites of origin and get there before the project starts. We also offer free consultations to people in relation to facility permits and how they get there. Information is freely available on the website of the National Waste Collection and Permitting Office. And we're also getting everybody's annual returns. We're looking at the annual returns from the collection permits, we're looking at the annual returns from the facility permits, and we're looking for the anomalies. We're looking for the gaps. We're also working with the Office of Government Procurement, standardised conditions about how people have to comply with their legal obligations, what contracts have been avoided, who has been awarded, who has got those contracts. We go back in, we check their returns, and we're looking for the anomalies. We use a number of methods then in relation to we operate checkpoints, multi-agency vehicle checkpoints for the Gardaí and all the other agencies. We're aerial surveillance looking for C&D waste. We can see where it is. In the helicopter, €1,500 an hour. We're also using drones. We're involved in a project with the European Space Agency looking for anomalies in thermal imaging and looking for anomalies in leachate from sites. We're entitled to so many images from the European Space Satellite that flies over every day. So we work with a lot of agencies. Multi-agency is the new buzzword for us, and we work with the National Parks and Wildlife Service, who will tell us about the damages to our special areas of conservation. We work with the EPA. One of the main organisations we work with are non-governmental organisations. There are only 57 waste enforcement officers in the southern region. That's all we have, from Munster plus Carlow, Kilkenny, Wexford. Non-governmental agencies, Coastwatch Ireland, on Tashkent, they will always tell you about places where dumping has happened. National Parks and Wildlife Service, they monitor these areas as well. There's a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year national complaints line. Cork County Council gets about 1,800 complaints a year. About 60% of them relate directly to waste. All those complaints are taken, they're all assigned a unique reference number, and we have to hit about 90% investigation in any 1 year. The Office of Government Procurement have recently started up, they started up last year, standardised contracts for all the sectors of the state, and we're putting in the legal obligations are in those contracts. So everybody who is working then, we can see who's been awarded contracts, we can look at their returns, and we can follow them all up. And it's really all to prevent it from happening. It's easier to solve the problem by preventing it from happening. Once we know that contracts are coming, we can get there before the whole thing starts. We can prevent people from making mistakes because they're expensive mistakes to rectify. Now, I mentioned earlier on there are legal consequences to not complying with the Waste Management Act. The first thing we do is the education and awareness. We're trying in these type of forums to get across our message about what you should do and what your obligations are. It's very easy to comply with it. If we come along and we see some issues of dumping, we can issue a direction under Section 14. That says, I just come on site, clean that up, stop doing it, whatever. Just give a direction, a verbal direction. That's all we have to give. Once we form that opinion, the consequences of not complying with a direction under Section 14 is €4,000 and or 12 months in prison, depending on the severity of the case in the district court. Again, prevention is easier than dealing with all these issues. If it's more serious, we can issue a notice. The notice will tell you that you must do X, Y, and Z. You must stop, secure the site, remove all the waste, carry out a site investigation, issues like that. We come along under prosecutions under Section 32, Section 34 and 39. 32 is causing environmental pollution. So you give your waste to someone, they dump it into an SAC, it's causing environmental pollution. You burn your waste on site, you dump it illegally on site the ditch, it's causing environmental pollution. Section 34 is carrying waste without waste collection permit. Again, that's an offence. 39 is disposing of it on a site without an authorisation to do so. We can go back further up along the list. We can have a warrant. I mentioned there that we have powers to enter sites. If we refuse to enter into sites, we get a warrant, we go back in. That's how we do it. We get an order in the High Court for things to stop immediately. If it's so serious, we want it to stop immediately. It very rarely comes to that. Once an authorised officer comes down, talks to landowners, really the whole thing, if they continue to do it, they're foolish people. We can take the biggest thing we have going for us at the moment is landfill levy. If waste is disposed of into a site illegally, the person has to pay 75 euros a tonne per waste going in there. If the person who's not known to have brought it in can't be ascertained, then the landowner has to do it. And in our experience, if you tell the landowner you're going to have to pay me X amount of money, he'll tell you immediately who brought it. So that's how we do it, and we're obliged under the Act, local authorities, to impose the landfill levy. We have no choice. We have a number of cases, and certainly in Cork County Council we have one case with the DPP at the moment in relation to the filling in of a special area of conservation. And the Director of Public Prosecutions has taken that case, and he took a case for us 2 years ago in relation to tyres dumped in a forest. So there's a lot of legal actions and that we can take in relation to it, but prevention is easier. So we need to go back up the food chain, we need to go back to the start of the project and just stop it. There are 400 people who can take your waste legally. There are 400 sites nationally where you can bring it to. So it's important for you to know that. But you as a holder of waste at the start of any project, if you're giving your waste to a guy and he's going somewhere, and he says if he's in Cork and he's delivering it out to Mallow and he comes back 5 minutes later, he ain't going to Mallow. You have to look at that, and that is your obligation, because we'll come back to the person from where the waste came from. So just this last quotation, 20% of the regulated population will automatically comply with any regulation. 5% will attempt to evade it, and the remaining 75% will comply as long as I think everybody else is. So our role is to ensure the consistent application of waste legislation nationally. So if you're working on a construction project, you bid for it, you're going to comply with all the regulations. Our job is to make sure that you are not undercut by someone who is not going to comply with the regulations. We operate our complaints lines, all have anonymity in them. We're not obliged to release the name of the person who makes the complaint to us. And I would say the biggest source of complaints we get in relation to C&D projects is the disappointed underbidder. And we always investigate. We never release them. We get FOI requests to release the name of the person who complained, and we never released it. So that's the point. It seems a bit harsh. We've had a much more positive presentations before this, but these are your obligations. If you comply with them, everything's okay. If you don't, this is what happens. So, thank you.